Over 27,000 children are dying of diabetes every year. The world is now looking at a rapid increase in juvenile diabetes, and therefore, on World Diabetes Day, it's of grave importance that you and I understand and come to terms with why it's such a big threat to life.
Children these days, like 2-year-old Sinthanai Selvan, aren't even old enough to understand what diabetes is before being affected by the disease. The parents now have the job of making his diet turn a new leaf.
இப்போ டாக்டர் சொல்ற அட்வைஸை ஃபாலோ பண்ணுறோம். இப்போ இவனுக்கு வந்து கரெக்டாக டயட் கொடுக்க சொல்கிறாங்க, காய்கறிகள் இது மாதிரிலாம் கொடுக்க சொல்கிறாங்க. இவனை அதை வந்து கோஆப்ரேட் பண்ண சொல்கிறாங்க. கொஞ்சம் கொஞ்சமாக கொடுத்து இவனுக்கு எப்படி இருக்குது பார்க்க சொல்கிறாங்க.
However, some say it is easier to change the diet of a very young child rather than trying to force an older one to stop eating all those types of food that kids now find it hard to resist.
இப்போ இவனுக்கோசரம் நான் அந்த வேலையை விட்டு நின்றுட்டு இவனை பார்க்குறதுக்கோசரமே நின்றுட்டு வீட்டில் இருக்கேன். இப்போ நான் படுற கஷ்டம் என்னுடைய எதிராளி கூட அந்த கஷ்டம் வரக்கூடாதுன்ற ஒரு ஃபீல் நம்மளுக்குள்ளே ஏற்படுது. இப்போ இவனுக்கோசரமே தனியாக ஸ்வீட்ஸ் இல்லாமல் சாக்லேட்ஸ் இல்லாமல் தனியாக இவனுக்குன்னு ஒரு என்ன ஸ்நாக்ஸ் வாங்கிட்டு வந்து வைக்கிறது, அவனுக்கு தேவையான இது நம்ம கண்ட்ரோல் பண்ணி கொண்டு வரது ரொம்ப கஷ்டம்.
A recent study by the Indian Council for Medical Research says that nearly 10 lakh children are affected by diabetes in India. 70% of diabetic children are between the age group of 1 and 10. 30,000 rupees is the requirement for the medical expenses per year, with 70% of diabetic children unable to pay for their treatment, and 27,000 children die annually due to this disease.
Primary prevention is the most important thing today. So children should exercise, young adults should exercise, housewives should exercise. These sedentary people should do exercise, cut down their food according to their level of physical activity. If you are a manual laborer, you can eat, but if you are a sedentary worker, you should eat less.
With Chennai now termed as the diabetic capital in the country, it's about time we wake up and nip the problem in the bud before we wait for an epidemic to arrive. In Chennai, with Lourdes Raj, Natasha Doraiswamy for NDTV Hindu.
Today is World Diabetes Day, and over 27,000 children dying of diabetes every year. The world is now looking at a rapid increase in juvenile diabetes. This is definitely a huge issue that needs to be addressed. With us, we have Dr. Ramachandran, who is a founder of Ramachandran's Diabetes Hospital and the president of India's Diabetes Research Foundation. He also teaches on the subject in the Imperial College, London. Sir, today is World Diabetes Day. For the benefit of audience, could you please explain the relevance of having such a day?
Yeah, the World Diabetes Day is celebrated on the 14th of November all over the globe. The reason is that diabetes has become a global epidemic today. We have about 366 million people with diabetes all over the world. One per person dies every second in the world, in any part of the world, due to diabetes. On the other hand, as far as children are concerned, it is a more dramatic problem because children have to be given insulin injections every day, and they have to continue the insulin for lifetime.
Coming to talk of it, 70% of children are affected by diabetes. I mean, from whatever statistics that I've heard, I could be wrong, but are we doing something dramatically wrong?
70% of children will have, they will not have diabetes. It's only the total number. For example, if you take adult population above the age of 20 years, in the urban population like Chennai, the prevalence of diabetes varies from 15 to 20%. Of that, about 1 to 2% are children with diabetes. The problem with children is that it is more difficult to manage and it is more dramatic, and children have to be on insulin injection throughout their life. So the family finds it a big difficult aspect to actually manage the children, because you cannot give them sweets, we have to give them food on time, and insulin dose has to be adjusted according to the plasma glucose levels. You have to do the home glucose monitoring. So diabetes in children is actually a problem for management, for the doctor, as well as the family is concerned. But the bigger problem for as globally is because of the what is called the type diabetes in the adulthood, which is becoming an epidemic proportion.
We will go to that, but before that, if you could kindly tell me what the peculiarities of this disease are. You just explained why it is difficult to manage diabetes in children. But what is so peculiar about diabetes?
The diabetes in children, which occurs at the age of 5 years, is not because of the lifestyle. It is only because of a virus infection, and the cells which produce insulin are completely knocked off.
Okay.
So the insulin deficiency is almost complete, and children have to be given insulin every day 2 or 3 times in order to survive. So that becomes a lifetime problem of treatment and management. And if you give little more insulin to them, they are going to low blood sugars, what is called hypoglycemia. So the growth has to be managed. Children have to go to school, they have to take insulin, they have to take food according to the plasma glucose level. So it becomes a little difficult problem to manage, and families will definitely find it difficult to accept a child having diabetes for the time.
So moving on to what you were mentioning earlier, in a global context, what is the relevance and prevalence of this problem?
Well, in a global context, the big problem is that the adult type of diabetes, which is called the type 2 diabetes, is becoming a big public health problem. Today we have 60 million people with diabetes in India. That means about 15 to 20% of adults living in Chennai or any city or any town in India has diabetes. And the other problem is 50% of people with diabetes may not be even diagnosed as diabetes, because diabetes is an asymptomatic disorder. The blood glucose goes up and you may not know that you have diabetes. That is very unfortunate. The causes of diabetes are typically because of obesity, sedentary life habits, and family history of diabetes. So we can actually identify the people who are at high risk of diabetes. If you have a family history of diabetes, if you are very much overweight and obese, and if you also have a sedentary life habits, then you are the person who are likely to get diabetes, and you are the person who has to go for an annual checkup for diabetes. And once diabetes is diagnosed, it is important that diabetes has to be controlled properly so that you don't land up in the complications of diabetes. Unfortunately, in India, younger people develop diabetes. Diabetes is typically a disease of old age. In the United States or in Britain, the peak age of onset is about 60, 65. On the other hand, in India, the peak age of onset is about 43. We in India develop diabetes at a younger age. We also develop diabetes with a lower weight, unfortunately. That is because genetically Indians are prone to have, there is a higher susceptibility to have diabetes.
So, so why do you think Indians have this high rate of diabetes infected people?
Well, that's an important question. We know that genetically we are more prone, but we do not know exactly what is the gene which is producing. But what is happening today is that 4 out of 5 newly detected diabetes is occurring in the developing world like India, China, and Southeast Asia. And there is a rapid globalization, rapid economic progress, a rapid change in lifestyle happening in our country and also in the developing world. This has actually increased the number of people with diabetes, and the epidemic is happening much more in the developing world compared to the developed world today.
So now where are we headed to at this rate? I mean, is there going to be some sense of consciousness that we need to have with regard to the practices that we follow? See, 27,000 children die of diabetes every year. What is the solution to this problem?
The diabetes in children is because of they have an autoimmune disorder like a viral disease, and we are not able to prevent that at all today, but except that, you know, the urban living conditions. But the diabetes in adults is a disease in which we can actually prevent, because we know the risk factors for that. Having born of diabetic parents, you can take steps to prevent diabetes, because we know obesity can be prevented, sedentary life habits can be completely avoided, and diet can be controlled. If you avoid too much of high calories like sugar, sweets, and butter and chocolates in a very regular manner, there's a very high chance of actually preventing or postponing diabetes. We have done studies in our center to show that if you have a high risk of diabetes, changing your lifestyle can actually postpone or completely prevent the onset of diabetes for years to come. So therefore, the question that you asked is very good, and that is, the World Diabetes Day is meant for increasing awareness and also disseminating the knowledge regarding the risk of diabetes among the people, because we have conquered most of the infectious diseases and we are going into an age of what is called non-communicable diseases. Of that, diabetes is the number 1 which is affecting people in India.
But do you think this awareness is good enough? I mean, is it good enough to specifically dedicate a day only for World Diabetes Day? I wouldn't have known of this till like now.
Well, this is the start. We feel that at least one diabetes day once in a year is something to start with. In my opinion, we should have a diabetes week all over the world, so that we can enough time for awareness campaigns.
So, sir, what according to you is a good diet plan that people should be kind of following to make sure that after a particular age, to make sure that they do not suffer from diabetes at a later age?
A diet which does not give you more of fat and more of energy is the most important. You should remain not obese. I mean, you should remain thin, and you should eat according to your activity level. After some age, your activity comes down, your metabolism becomes less, and you need much less food than a young people who can do a lot of activity. So therefore, you have to be careful on what you are eating, because mostly avoiding fats and sugars in the food, and more importantly, very important thing is to be more active, physically more active. Unfortunately, the common man does not really realize that a physical activity is an important part of good health, and that's a bigger problem that we have today in India, because most of us are spending a lot of time in front of the computers, in front of the TV screens, and also using cars, and the physical activity has come to a minimum. So I think we have to be physically active, reduce your total calories, avoid sugar, sweets and fats, and therefore that is one of the best ways of preventing obesity and diabetes.
So is there a message that you have for our viewers on this day?
Yeah, I think the first message that be physically active, incorporate physical activity into your workplace and also into your life, day-to-day life. Secondly, especially if you have a family history of diabetes, please, and if you are above 25, and if you are overweight, and if you have sedentary lifestyle and professional life, kindly check for diabetes at least once in a year, so that early diagnosis is made, because as I told earlier, diabetes can remain asymptomatic without any symptoms. Healthy people develop diabetes, so you need to check if you have a risk of diabetes. That's the message.
Before I let you go, sir, so there is no real solution for children who are born with diabetes, I mean, to prevent that happening?
At this point, we do, unfortunately, there are a couple of trials, very large trials have been done to prevent diabetes in children, and those trials have not been successful at all. So type 1 diabetes or juvenile diabetes occurring in children occurs because of genetic tendency plus a viral infection and antibodies against the cells which produce insulin. Unfortunately, we do not have any method scientifically to prevent childhood diabetes.
No cure either, it's permanent.
It's a permanent thing. The other part is the type 2 diabetes which occur in adults can occur in children at the age of 15 and 16 because of obesity. That's a different cup of tea. That type of diabetes can be prevented if you do not become obese. If children do not become obese by the age of 12 and 15, they can prevent the adult type of diabetes. But diabetes occurring classically in children at the age of 5, 6 and even in newborn at the age of 1 year, we do not have a method of preventing at all today.
Okay, thank you so much, sir. That was extremely informative. And today is Children's Day. On the other side of the break, we will show you how children celebrated this day across the country.